So to everybody who's joined the call, to all the folks at the chamber, to you, Mr. President and CEO of the chamber, thank you for the partnership that we've had with you over the last 3.5 years with DPP. Thank you again for sponsoring this conference. You asked me to introduce our next speaker. Obviously has tremendous experience in an area that's a very important part of our sector, the retail sector of Delaware's economy, particularly here in northern Newcastle County. His firm owns Brookfield Properties, is a firm that owns large retail centers across the country, including probably the largest retail center in Newcastle County, there, Christiana Mall. They've been a great partner through COVID-19 and following and working with our Division of Public Health so that they can open safely. Obviously, they're rethinking. I had a conversation with Jared Chupaila just earlier this week about the decisions that they have to make with the retail centers that they own. He's assured me that Christiana Mall is one of their better properties. Obviously, the right thing to say to the governor of Delaware, but I'm sure he's going to be interesting. You need to know, in addition to, I'll tell you a little bit about his biography. He's the chief operating officer there at Brookfield, where he oversees the company's. He previously served as chief operating officer, where he oversaw the company's day-to-day operations, including leasing, business development, asset and property management, marketing and business intelligence and strategy. Before that, he spent nearly 2 decades at GGP in multiple roles, including executive vice president of leasing. So he's been in this business for a long time. He knows the business now as a leader of Brookfield, but more importantly, he's an old jock like myself, a worn out athletic guy from upstate New York. We share similar backgrounds in that we were raised by educators. Jared's father was a principal at a high school in Syracuse. Jared was a lacrosse and football star there in high school and then moved on to Harvard University. Remember, Jared, you don't have to, these are my comments. The older we get, the better we used to be. You can tell them that every time you played Dartmouth that Harvard won, both in lacrosse and in football. I know I had some long afternoons at Harvard Stadium and up in Hanover. But we're delighted, Jared, that you're coming in. Not sure where you are there. You got an interesting background. I'm sure you'll tell us. I believe when we spoke, I thought you were in Las Vegas, but you were somewhere else. We're just delighted that you're in part virtually here in the state of Delaware. It is a small state, but a state where we know one another. We have a tradition of working together, business and the government sector, and we were the first state to ratify the Constitution, as you might know. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for what you're going to bring to developing Delaware this year.
All right. Well, thank you, Governor. I appreciate that introduction. And thank you to the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce for enabling me and inviting me to speak today as part of the Developing Delaware Conference. The Governor is correct. We do have some common background in our upbringing, but I won't go into the who won or lost between our two alma maters. I would say they're both equal fine institutions with storied past. So. I'm happy to speak with you today about the change in the retail industry. I've spent a 20-year career, as the Governor noted, working with our team to address just that challenge. And that challenge is constant. Retail, like much of life, is ever changing and is the only constant we really deal with. So. I think our unique perspective of having a portfolio that spans the entire country puts us in a good position to have great visibility to what's happening today in retail and where we expect that to go in the near future. Before I speak too much about what's next, I do think it's appropriate to frame a little bit of the past and present just to sort of set our history there in the great state of Delaware, as well as what we've been doing along that time. So we date back to 2004 with our acquisition of Christiana Mall. Christiana is candidly one of our top tier assets in our portfolio, extremely well-performing asset and a well-positioned asset to remain relevant for a long future. Many of the reasons why, which I'll speak to a little bit, is because it was a little bit ahead of its time, addressing change as change was occurring. But before I go into that, I do want to thank Steve Chambliss as well, our GM at Christiana Mall, and his team for their stellar management of the property and being great members of the community there and stewards of both small and big businesses alike. So thank you, Steve. Setting the stage on Christiana, some of these facts some of you may know, some of them you may not. It is, as the governor mentioned, the largest shopping center in Delaware, and actually it's the largest between Philadelphia and Baltimore at about 1.3 million square feet of combined square footage. The governor spoke about employment. We employ full-time employees of about 2,000 people. That balloons to over 3,400 when you include part-time and seasonal employees, which are quite constant in the retail business. What that does not include, and we don't have tallied our numbers, are the numerous construction jobs and service jobs that are support the property and the property operation and the retailers that are there. I also don't believe we often talk enough about the small businesses that we support, which the governor noted in his remarks as well. You know, we, of course, we're known, we are a big corporation. We house a number of large retail corporations and brands within Christiana Mall and our other assets, but we also are probably one of the largest supporters of small businesses. When you think about the various carts and kiosks in the common area that you witness when you walk through the property, and the numerous local food and eateries that are housed at the property, we are a big employer and supporter of small business, not only in providing the opportunity for the business to be created, but to provide capital to them in their efforts to get that business started in the early stages. Just to continue on with Christiana a bit, we have over 130 tenants. The center is, as I noted, one of the most productive, not only in our portfolio, but also within the industry. That is in large part, as everybody there well knows, because of the opportunity for tax-free shopping. We welcome over 11 million people annually to the shopping center, and roughly 65 to 70% of those are from in-state, with the balance crossing over state boundaries to take advantage of that tax-free shopping. I think the other advantage that Christiana has, which is critically important, and it'll come up as we talk about where we go in the future and where retail is going, that's continued capital investment into these assets to ensure that they're positioned to meet the changes that are occurring over time. And whether we solve the ones we're going to talk about today or not, I assure you there will be more over the next 5-10 years. It's a business that is constantly evolving. Since we bought Christiana, we've invested approximately $250 million back into the asset. What's important about that is two things as we talk about evolution and relevance within the retail industry. One of those is curation and tenant curation. You've got to have retailers and retail businesses that meet the needs of the community. So let's think about what just occurred in the pandemic when, unfortunately, but understandably, there was a differentiation between essential and non-essential businesses. Well, as part of that capital investment, we're able to welcome Target to the project in its past, well ahead of Target becoming quite an important and dominant retailer within our industry. Additionally, we brought in Cabela's, Cinemark, a theater operator, and Nordstrom, all of which are, over time, have become more critically important to regional shopping centers as more traditional apparel retailers have found difficulties and challenges within their operation. Not to mention, or I failed to mention, that we have also brought forward unique specialty tenants such as Apple and Tesla, which continue to present Christiana as a very relevant opportunity to shop. And I think those unique offerings are what also help pull across consumers across state lines. So as part of that investment, another thing that's critically important to us, and I think you can't talk about the future without addressing it as well, and that's sustainability. We were actually the first in the state of Delaware, the first major corporation to go to solar. We invested and installed a 1.1 megawatt capacity solar array at Christiana Mall. And even today, it still remains one of the top 10 in the state in terms of capacity. That's consistent with what we've done across our portfolio. We believe in conscious capitalism and believe sustainable practices both support the communities we serve and create value to all stakeholders, including our employees and consumers alike. We're actually the #1 producer of solar capacity power within our industry, that being the retail real estate industry. And over the last 5 years, we've reduced our carbon footprint by realizing a 34% reduction in grid purchased common area electricity consumption. So pretty significant movement. We have in 2012, we put a 10-year sustainability goal in place, which will be concluding in 22. And we're well on our way to meeting the goals that we had set forth. That array that I spoke of at Christiana, producing about 1.1 million kilowatt hours of solar capacity a year, which, just to put that in framework, could take 200 cars off the roads every year, given what it's producing for us. We've moved 95% of the lighting at the property to energy efficient lamps, and we will expect to be at 100 shortly. That focus on environmental, social, and governance has been particularly important during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I do want to address a little bit of the current. Throughout this pandemic, even as we were temporarily closed, as was the same at Christiana, and I'll speak to that in a bit, we've sought to be a resource to the communities we serve. Particularly there at Christiana, we put up a drive-through food drive and worked with Food Bank of Delaware during the pandemic, in which we served 2,500 families. So we're happy to say that the team there, as I mentioned before, Steve and his team did a great job stepping up and being a part of trying to help. Per Governor Carney's direction, which I don't envy, the decisions that had to be made by Governor Carney regarding closing businesses. And he and I had a chance to speak about that earlier this week. We recognized what was necessary, and we dealt with that operationally accordingly, and I think in the best way that we could. Just kind of frame that, the mandate to close went into effect March 24th. By May 8th, so about 6 weeks later, we had stood up a fully operational curbside system to enable consumers and our retailers to connect so that they could move product, move commerce while we were still closed on the interior of the property. About a month later, the mandate was lifted on June 3rd, and we were able then to once again welcome those consumers and community back into the property. That during that time, which we all learned, and we're not alone in this, it was really apparent that the health and safety and well-being of everyone who shops, works, and walks through our doors is paramount. So we put into place a number of new safety measures and protocols. And as the governor and I spoke about earlier this week, and I think relevant to this conversation about the future, I frankly don't see many of these going away post-pandemic. I think whenever you face adversity, we all learn to do things either more efficiently or just better. And there's no reason not to continue some of the safety protocols that we've had to put in place. Some of those that I'll speak to, there are now plentiful hand sanitizing stations across the portfolio. We are more frequently and intensely cleaning all high-touch surfaces like door handles. We have provided touch-free interactions. I think you'll see that continue in many retail formats and just generally in public gathering place formats. We've reduced our operating hours. That I believe is temporary and will change. But as we all know, business was impacted, so it was important to us to also help the retailers and small businesses that we support by making sure they could also be more efficient with their costs to run their business and shave off some of the less producing hours on either end of the operating day. Our security officers are passing out masks to guests who do not have a face covering. Masks are mandatory in the state of Delaware, and we want to make sure that we're complying, and we will continue to. Most importantly, I think for those of you that are talking and listening to what's occurring during the pandemic, we've upgraded our air filtration system both at Christiana and across our whole portfolio to MERV 13 air filters, which is about as good as you can get until you get into a medical grade facility. And frankly, we would have done that if it weren't for the fact that our commercial systems and others of our peers just aren't built to be able to receive a filter any greater than MERV 13. And then lastly, I think as we'll all continue to do, we encourage and politely enforce social distancing. So our team members there, as well as our security and maintenance staff, cleaning crew they've all been employed to ensure that if we see gatherings of more than a few people, that we politely ask that people not dwell too long, break up, and maintain a safe distance from one another. So where are we today? We're back to having 96% of our retailers open within the property. Our traffic has now gotten back to about 75% of what it was pre-pandemic for same months last year. And I think importantly, not only to our bottom line, but to the health of the property, our collections are back up over 80%. We are still all dealing in the retail business between retail owner and retailer, figuring out how to deal with the contractual obligations between the two parties during these times when business was impaired, and certainly during times when properties and businesses were required to be closed. So we still have more work to do to get back to sort of a stable state, but we're well on our way, and we're looking forward to a positive fourth quarter and holiday season. So now that we've kind of caught up on past and present, let's talk a little bit about where we're headed next. We have recently published a white paper on the topic, so this conference is timely. That white paper is actually available on the website for the conference, as I understand it, and available to everybody attending. Encourage you to read it and soak it in. I'm going to speak topically about what we address in there, but I'll leave everyone the opportunity to read more of the details in the white paper. So the headlines maybe aren't what some would expect. Brick and mortar retail is not passé, as some would suggest. We actually see it as the bedrock foundation for which bolster online sales success. So where some believe e-com is moving in front, we would suggest to you, as I'll speak to later or in the upcoming minutes, about why retail actually is the foundation for which e-com can thrive upon. The pandemic, while it's often talked about and highlighted the potential for change that it brings about within the industry, we would actually suggest to you that the pandemic has really just been an accelerator of change that was already underway within our industry and within the retail industry as a whole. What I mean by that is those retailers that we've all heard about this year, and there have been many that have gone bankrupt, they were sick prior to the pandemic. The pandemic just accelerated the path to bankruptcy filing and a restructuring for their organization. Retail centers that are in transition, and need to likely become something else, were already less relevant prior to the pandemic. The pandemic has only accelerated their need to rethink the way that they engage with the community. And digital technology that is being talked about today to service a consumer within the retail industry was already well underway in being created and being thought of as a path to the future for path to purchase from consumer to retailer. And we'll talk about those as we go on here. But that said, our industry cannot be complacent. Retail and real estate owners need to evolve to meet changing consumer behavior. We need to provide the consumer what they want, where they want it, when they want it, and more often than not now, that comes with a personal touch or a request for a personal touch. We're going to focus on 3 key points, as does the white paper. Those 3 points are, first, a one-channel strategy, which I'll define in a bit. The fact that physical stores remain valuable profit centers, and that high-quality retail real estate will ultimately remain relevant for the long term. So let's start with one channel. Brookfield Properties defines one-channel retail as providing the consumer with a consistent, relevant, and individualized experience across digital and physical assets to deliver a seamless engagement with a brand. So what does that really mean? It's providing optionality and convenience to the customer, which is what they're seeking today. Technology has made us all aware of the opportunity to have an opinion and an option in the way we go about purchasing the things we either need or want. A one-channel strategy that is truly fully integrated enables the brand to deliver that promise to the consumer. That is critically important as the retail business moves forward. But as I said before, the retailers were moving towards that long before the pandemic set in. This was recognized by all of the most astute and largest retailers within the country and within our business. Those that invested early are now reaping those benefits. Those that did not are becoming less relevant, less competitive, and ultimately losing market share. Retailers, and frankly, retail real estate owners as well, should be agnostic to where the sale is made. It really doesn't matter anymore. They should simply be focused on increasing total sales and completing that sale in the most cost-efficient manner. The result of a one-channel strategy is truly greater profitability. And more profitable retailers make for more profitable retail shopping centers. So let's go to number 2. Physical stores remain valuable profit centers. Prior to the pandemic, and for some time prior to the pandemic, approximately 80% of all retail sales were completed in a physical location. And they were growing at 2% a year annually. 2% may not seem much compared to the growth rates you've heard on digital, but keep in mind that you're moving 80% versus moving the rest of the 100%. Those are the smaller numbers always going to accelerate at a faster pace on a percentage basis. Stores are the workhorses that benefit brands. They are, of course, points of sale, but they are also points of customer acquisition, brand engagement, and brand awareness building. They maximize operational benefits, such as being a distribution facility and a pickup and return center. Retailers are improving margin through buy online, pick up in store, buy online, ship from store, and encouraging retailers to return the product to the store so they can get it back on the floor and sell it at full price faster, versus that return going to a central warehouse, having to be unpacked, repacked, reshipped, resent out to either a store or to a home, at which time, I assure you, it's gone too far into the season and it needs to be discounted and they're losing margin. The other notion that is now largely and well understood is the halo effect that brick and mortar provides. So as a digitally native brand or retailer opens a store within a market with appropriate demand, we see that they increase total sales within that market by as much as 234%, meaning that the store itself not only, of course, delivers new sales for walk-in and buy online, pick up in store sales, but it increases the awareness of the brand in the marketplace, and therefore their total sales, inclusive of their digital sales for that product and brand. Inversely, when a retailer closes a store in a market with a balanced demand, they not only lose the sales of the store, but on average, they lose another 10% of their online sales, their e-com sales. So the reverse halo effect is occurring. I want to drive home the importance of brick and mortar sales within retail, and that was highlighted during the pandemic. At the height of the pandemic, when most of the country was closed for physical shopping, digital sales increased by almost $7 billion. It was $6.7 billion. It's a big number. However, it pales in comparison to the fact that at that same time, physical sales in store lost $44.3 billion in sales. Digital only cannot stand up and provide what physical stores do for the industry. And that was made very clearly during the pandemic, and has now been not only recognized loudly, but spoken to publicly by many of the large retail CEOs. So let's talk about high quality real estate, the third key component that I noted, which, by the way, Christiana Mall is a part of. High quality real estate is positioned to be relevant for the long term as it continues to serve the needs of its businesses, consumers, and communities. The number one challenge in our country, and I'm going to speak to Delaware and the market with which Christiana sits within, is the oversaturation of retail real estate. It is not e-commerce. As I spoke to in a one-channel strategy, physical and digital need to work together. That's the best way to service the consumer going forward, and ultimately that's what both retailer and retail real estate owner are aiming to do. The U.S. has 24 square feet of GLA, gross leasable area, that's total square footage, of retail real estate per capita. That's 50% more than the next largest national market among developed countries, which happens to be Canada. However, US sales are only 1/3 more than Canada. So reverse those data points. We have 2 times the amount of retail square footage that Canada has, but only receiving 1/3 more of sales that they are competing for. We're just oversaturated with retail real estate, and that's the plain truth. The result of that means that consolidation is coming. Consolidation is something we've been talking about within the industry for quite some time now. And again, as it relates to the pandemic, this is not new because of the pandemic. Pandemic is only accelerating, as I spoke to earlier, that centers that were less relevant prior to the pandemic are now more rapidly moving to being even further less relevant and in need of change. I'll break this down a little bit for everyone. Low rated centers, and there's a company called Green Street Advisors that scales every regional shopping center in the country. Lower rated centers make up 22% of that GLA that I spoke to, but they only account for 11% of US retail sales. High quality rated centers account for 58%, almost 60% of all US retail sales, but only make up 36% of the GLA. So you see a very significant inverse relationship at the top and the bottom of the quality spectrum scale, which just further speaks to the fact that that consolidation is on its way and is already in motion. I said I'd speak a little bit about the local market. Christiana sits within what is deemed the Philadelphia, Camden, Wilmington market, the MSA, which is compared across the country. That marketplace has 42 square feet per capita of retail real estate within it as compared to the national average of 24. So 24 we already noted is twice the amount of Canada nationally. Marketplace Christiana is sitting within as 42. So this is a real and relevant matter that both the state of Delaware, folks that are on this call, ourselves as the owner of Christiana, all have to be cognizant of, be thinking about, and be planning for as we move forward. A little fact on physical retail that I want to share, specifically relating to shopping centers. High quality retail centers deliver 40% more unique shoppers on average than urban retail districts, excluding Manhattan, important note. And those mall shoppers, on average, are already primed and ready to buy versus browse. We usually make a trip to a regional shopping center with a purchase in mind. So they are a highly qualified consumer as well. So what's ahead? What does this all sort of summarize as? First of all, high quality retail center owners must continue to evolve their properties to remain relevant. Tenant curation is key to move beyond being simply special occasion shopping and creating destinations that serve all consumer and community needs. Second, changing consumer demands require retailers and real estate owners to adopt digital technology to evolve the traditional path to purchase. What that means is we got to provide access and flexibility the consumers are demanding to obtain products and services they need anytime and anywhere. So what that really means is yesterday, a regional shopping center was simply a shopping destination. The owner was simply known as a landlord. Tomorrow, that shopping center needs to be a center and a hub of daily life. And that owner and developer needs to act more like a lifestyle architect, providing that community with, yes, shopping, but also with community gathering, food and entertainment, recreation, discovery, and health, and fulfillment and logistics. So lastly, what I want to speak to is just our overall view of where we are and what we expect post-pandemic. We believe people crave social interaction and community. The retail industry will continue to evolve to fulfill this need by providing space for people to connect, explore, and engage, which leads to our final forward-looking statement. Retailers and retail centers have a responsibility to create a positive impact on the environment and be a voice on social issues that are important to the communities they serve. Working together, retailers, shopping centers, and their communities may drive improvement for all stakeholders that will ensure long-term relevance and future-proof the industry. So with that, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think we're going to do some Q&A.
Jared, thank you. That was terrific. A couple of, you said a couple things that kind of put me back in my chair, like, wow. And maybe we could tease out a little bit more of that, but thank you very much. It was really good stuff. So let's kind of, I've got a number of questions here that I'd like to go through with you. So, and you in part addressed this, but any other highlights you want to make? So there've been headlines over the last couple of years about the challenges, and you touched on this a little bit about, kind of some of the traditional older department stores and some of the headwinds that they've faced as things kind of change. And while that doesn't seem to be the case too much at Christiana, how does Brookfield respond to vacancies when an anchor store does decide to close, vacate, or shrink?
That's a great question and a really relevant one, as you know well. I did address that a little bit in the opening comments, mention what we've done there at Christiana. So there are certainly alternative retail uses that are occupying those department store buildings as that evolution occurs and the department store industry consolidates. But in addition to that, and I would encourage all of the constituents to be mindful of this and think about it as retail is changing. These sites, regional shopping center sites specifically, but even smaller community sites, are pretty decent sized pieces of land And they have the opportunity to be redeveloped and to be other sources of outlet for the community and for economic development. So some examples of that that we've done within our portfolio. In Linwood, Washington, we have a mall, Alderwood Mall. We had a Sears go out, as many have across the country. We struck a partnership with Avalon Bay, another publicly traded large multifamily REIT. And we're putting up over 350 units of residential within that space with some restaurants beneath it. Again, to start to move towards more of a mixed use facility that enables the property to behave a little differently for the community. When coupled with the right curation, we start to allow the property to utilize more of the day parts, and or more said differently, the community to use more of the day parts at the property. So think of adding health and fitness facilities like Oak Brook, which we talked about earlier, Mike, near your hometown. We have a deal under construction with Lifetime Fitness, really large health and wellness operator across the country, rooftop pool, rooftop deck, tennis courts, something that really can engage the community and bring them to the property for other reasons. And that interplays well with the curated retail we have at Oak Brook Center. And then lastly, I think you're going to see a lot of, in these regional centers, the additions of daily needs outlets. So what I mean by that is grocery, pharmacy, healthcare. So at Paramus Park, which is in Paramus, New Jersey, another example would be in a former Sears building as well. We've opened recently a Stu Leonard's. For anybody that's been up in the Northeast, you may have come across Stu Leonard's. They do a fantastic job, great grocery operation and wine operation as well. And it's been really well welcomed by the community. Allows that community to break down some of the notions of regional shopping centers that are, maybe past tense, and that is that they're difficult to get to, difficult to find parking, and difficult to move around. As we add more daily needs uses, starts to break down that notion. People get comfortable with the trip, with being there on a more regular basis, and it only allows for them to more easily then grab the special needs purchase that they may have been thinking about or needing, or make a return, as I spoke to earlier, to that retailer of something they purchased previously, which is benefiting that retailer.
That's great. I mean, it's fascinating because when you start to think about, it's interesting if for anybody that's ever been to a ski resort community that's been completely built out of scratch from the kind of the base of the mountain up, it's basically a planned community. And I think what you're saying is you're going to kind of get to that in some cases, but in a different kind of a way. You started out with the shopping and the retail as a hub, but now you're adding the other amenities that otherwise you would expect if you were a resident, whether it's dry cleaning and other kinds of traditional services you find on a main street if you were a community. Very, very interesting. Do you see then some of you obviously have to, what do you have to? Do you have to work with local governments to kind of sort out the zoning, or is some of that already baked in?
It depends on the property. In certain cases, the commercial zoning that we have may already enable us to work within the framework of the zoning to add other commercial real estate components. But in others, yeah, we have to work with the local municipality, the building department, go in and make sure that we're all being transparent with one another and really working together to try to welcome change for the benefit of the community. And I think that's important to speak to is, as this evolution occurs and these retail centers are going to have to, many are going to have to evolve. Fear of that isn't going to help anything, and resistance of it, frankly, won't help either. It's just going to slow down the process, allow that property to only fall into more disrepair and lack of relevance, and potentially cost a company its opportunity to act upon the change that the property needs. So I think it's important for the developers and communities and government to really be transparent with one another and be proponents of one another to make sure that that change isn't able to occur, that there's less red tape along the way, that we do it is done together in a methodical manner to make sure that the product that's being offered doesn't simply oversaturate something else within the particular community. So it should be filling something that has demand and greater demand than what is currently offered within the community. And we try to match that up and mirror it at each of our assets across the country, which is why there's no one solution for either redeploying a department store box or completely redeveloping a center. There's always going to, that solution is going to be specific to what that community and the municipality it sits within needs.
That's great. That's great. It's fascinating stuff. In addition to my tenure here at the Chamber, I'm actually a mayor of a city of 5,500. So and I used to chair the Planning Commission. So I kind of geek out on that. So thanks for all that. It's fascinating, though. It's really fascinating. Sometimes, and I know that this gets lost on a lot of consumers. You said a couple of things. I mean, we could take this on for hours, and I know your time is limited. But let's distinguish. What I'll call, because I think sometimes people think of retail and they think of it in kind of a monolithic kind of a way. But let's distinguish what I'll call traditional retail of clothing, shoes, home furnishings, and the like from what I'll call, my words, necessary retail, like food, personal hygiene products, pharmacy, stuff like that. So, and then let's take, through the pandemic, and you look at home delivery and maybe some of the efficiencies that, all of that has borne. So, what are your thoughts about kind of the delivery mechanisms? And then do you see, what's kind of the schedule or the timing for all that? I think people, and that kind of jumps into kind of what you said about how, the brick and mortar kind of serves such a brand awareness piece. Again, it never occurred to me. This is why you're in the business you are. It just kind of builds a brand. All this is interrelated, but just fascinating stuff. But let's talk about maybe the delivery kind of and timing and maybe the differentiation of different kinds of retail. What are your thoughts?
So I'll talk about timing first. I think we're in the midst of it right now. So, I mean, it's happening during the pandemic, as I've probably seen publicly reported or spoken to, grocery delivery, use of Instacart, use of other food delivery services, restaurant delivery. That all went up out of necessity in many cases as people were reticent to go out into public. I expect that a good portion of that will remain. Once you, again, as I spoke to from a health and safety protocol in operating our centers, I think the same is true for most human behavior. Once we get comfortable with something that was, maybe we resisted in the past just because of change's sake, we usually stick with it. Not everybody, not 100%, but a good portion of it. I think it's here to stay, and I think more so for part of the question was around product, more so for those daily needs that are really, it's understood. I need a tube of Crest toothpaste, or I need a jug of milk, or I need a screwdriver, from Home Depot that I'm well aware needs to be a Phillips head. Those are easy decisions to make. Buy online, price shop, and out of convenience, have it delivered to your house. I think, as I spoke to, online sales and delivery to your home is not anything new during the pandemic. There was an acceleration mostly in the needs-based items like grocery, but it's been going on for quite some time. And history, I think, will prove true that something that is what I would define as a more subjective purchase. And what I mean by that is you don't really know if you like the color online. You don't really know if the size fits you well. You haven't really bought it before. So your options are, do I buy 2 sizes in 3 different colors and then send 4 of them back because I don't want to keep 2? Or do I get up and go to the store and engage with the product and the brand? Maybe I don't make the purchase at the store, but at least I got to touch it, feel it, decide what I like. And again, if that retailer has a one-channel strategy, I can stay with that retailer on my journey, even after I visit a location, and maybe make that sale once I go back to home or go to work on my lunch break. I think we'll see that those lesser needs, like apparel, like furniture, and home furnishings, special purchases, they're going to require a little bit more frequency of human touch. Certainly the vehicle is there to ship them. It's not a matter of whether they can be shipped. I think it's when they're shipped. And I think there will always be a part of that process that will include the consumer showing up physically to see it, touch it, interact with it, experience it. And then, yeah, they may choose to have it shipped to their house, but that's just a tactical strategy at that point.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, what this did for me personally, I mean, I got part of my day back. If I didn't have to go to the Home Depot on the Saturday, I didn't have to go to the dry cleaners, and I could get my grocery shopping sent to the house. Man, I had 4 hours of my day back on Saturday, which I found incredibly convenient. And I just wonder if some of those things will just continue. And I think your answer kind of addressed a lot of that. We'll see.
I think it will, but we're also creatures of wanting to be part of the community. And, we probably all have a neighbor who's washed his car 40 times since the pandemic started out in his driveway. And he's not out there because the car needs to be washed again. He's probably out there because he doesn't want to be in the house any longer.
He's bored.
Yeah. So I think and would expect that even yourself, that convenience is there when you need it. That's the optionality I spoke to. But you also appreciate getting up and just walking through Home Depot and going aisle by aisle and checking out some other tools now and then as well. So you're not going to stop doing that.
Right.
But Home Depot is a great example of a retailer that has a really well orchestrated one-channel strategy and can deliver you, the customer, that optionality to either choose on that Saturday when you got a lot on your honey-do list to go out and have that delivered to your house and take the convenience option. The next Saturday, if you just want to go kill 45 minutes and see what Home Depot has to offer, you'll go walk the store still.
No, good point. Because if I'm looking for a new grill, I might look at 4 or 5 different options because I can see them all in one place as opposed to just getting the one. Right? Yeah. Good point. Let's and you touched on this too, Jared. Let's pivot from kind of the large shopping center because and I know you're in Chicago. The governor kind of was making reference to where you are and the Chicago River behind you. Let's talk about, when you travel up and down the state or as you drive, in your case, through the Chicago suburbs, you pass, all of us do, you pass what seems like countless these strip centers, smaller, shopping experiences with maybe 8 to 10 stores or something like that. And I think you touched on this a little bit about how maybe some of those are going to struggle and or could be repurposed. So what do you think, or talk again for us, if you will, about the future of kind of those smaller retail and what the future looks like for them?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because the stats that I gave in my speech were specific to regional shopping centers like malls. But what's important to note, the 24 square feet that I spoke to on a national average, that's inclusive of all retail square footage. So that is not specific to malls. So my point in clarifying that is, to your question, all retail real estate is subject to consolidation. And I will point out that, look, as the owner and operator of large regional shopping centers, you mentioned the consolidation of the department store industry in the first question and our need to then evolve that real estate. Well, what we see as opportunity, and I share this not as anything other than, again, awareness so people can plan accordingly and look in the mirror and understand where the state of their retail real estate is today. When we see those department stores come down, one of the opportunities we see, as I spoke to bringing daily needs to the property, those department store buildings in a typical center, Christiana is not too different in this, although we do have a little bit more of the property that's been able to be turned out. But those department store boxes are really big. And by nature, then, they physically and visually create more of a fortress look, because we don't control the exterior of the building. We don't control the outer part of the premises that is right up against the parking space. So as we get them back, the opportunity for us is to potentially take down that department store building, open up the larger property with more of a presence to the exterior. Not only helps with the look and feel of the asset itself, but it enables us to attract retail uses that typically went into local strip centers, grocery anchored centers, neighborhood shopping centers, to backfill that space and to round out the needs offering for that community. And why I share that again is not so much about us, it's about the evolution that will occur is going to impact all retail real estate owners. So the strip center owners have to recognize this same challenge that's coming, and the fact that there's new competition in the process from the large regional centers now courting more of the users that typically went into the smaller strip center developments. But look, I think the solution to that is still similar. Just because the size of asset doesn't change the fact that curating the property correctly or more currently, let's say, always be mindful of the tenant mix. Are your larger anchor tenants those that have invested properly within their business, that are moving more towards an evolved retail platform? If they are, then they're probably going to be there for a while, and they probably are gaining more market share from the consumer, and therefore they are a healthy, credible tenant for you to maintain a retail presence around for a longer period of time. If the answer to that is no, the retailers, as you look around, are lesser positioned to deal with the evolution occurring, and therefore are likely unfortunately in a position where they are becoming less relevant. Then owners ought to be thinking about what is next and what can I do, and then sit down with their communities and with the building departments and think about ways that real estate can be redeployed. And there are many options. I mean, we talk about a number of things, and the governor mentioned some of them in his speech, with what's going on in there in Delaware and some of the businesses that you're recruiting. Look, healthcare and personal health services is something that's changing dramatically. There's a number of operators that no longer want to be part of a large regional healthcare facility. They want to get into the neighborhoods and get into the communities so that their clients can get to them more quickly and easily. They are great occupiers of small strip center space, and they bring a recurring consumer base or client base to the property. So I don't think the game itself is too different. It's just played at a different scale. But the challenges are similar. The evolution that's occurring is going to impact it similarly, and the opportunity to evolve presents itself just in a different scale.
That's great. That's great. It's fascinating. One of the priorities of the chamber was to push out the build out of broadband throughout the rest of Delaware. We've got some technological connectivity deserts, believe it or not, in some parts of the city of Wilmington, but also through rural parts of our state. And so when we think about advancements in technology, and to the governor's credit, he dedicated $20 million of CARES Act money to kind of fill those gaps, which we're grateful for. But when you think about technology in the retail sector, and you touched on some of this, that the pandemic has just kind of frankly accelerated some of these changes. This stuff was coming anyway, but it's kind of put some of this stuff kind of ramped up the speed. And just in the way that Americans shop, um, and you touched on this in part, but let me ask this. It's not so much the delivery mechanisms, because you could have drones, you could have other kinds of delivery that we just, we think is futuristic, but the future's here. When I go to Christiana, I have a fully electric car. I can now, thank you very much, plug in my car for 2 hours while I'm there, and I get rock star parking because it's right up front too. So I appreciate it. But what kinds of like, so if you were somebody who was at either technical school or community college, in a college or university, and you were studying tech, and you thought you wanted to work in the retail space, what kinds of skill set, what kinds of things do you think are necessary that the sector is going to look for? It's not so much the shopping experience, because you've talked about that I as a consumer would encounter, whether I'm buying something with my phone, or I want to go have the high touch experience at the actual physical brick and mortar location. But what are some of the things that what are some of the other kinds of trends in tech that you think are important for retail in the future?
Data. I think we are at this generation, and the generations younger than I am, have begun to more widely accept data as into their decision making, and I think companies are responding to that. We ourselves are wildly interested in exploring better ways to use the data available to us, to provide consumers with what they want, and to help our retailers along the way, frankly. So if I'm someone young moving into the technology space or thinking about a career in technology, I think one of those avenues is to be continually thinking about tech that is able to capture unique raw data, then being able to take the data, break it down, and supply it to businesses that help them operate more efficiently. And I think we're just at the beginning of what that means to the retail industry, and I'll just leave it at the retail industry, but I think it applies to many others. If I could tell any of our retailers today exactly who their consumer is, their propensity to shop, how much they shop their brand, who else they shop on a typical visit, I'm changing the way and enabling that retailer to go after that consumer to make sure they get a larger share of wallet. It starts to change what decisions they make and where they physically put their store and their location. It starts to change the size of the location, of the store location. It starts to change the amount of inventory they need to carry. It starts to change the way they think about their branding and advertising and marketing, as they better understand exactly what that consumer is doing. And we have a unique visibility into this because we're also invested in other countries around the world, some of which, and I'm not politicizing this, but some of which don't have the same consumer safety measures that we do here in the US. And so in those cases, we actually have the ability, in that case it's the government, that has the ability, because of your cell phone, to watch everything you are doing. And we are beginning in the retail business to be able to take that data over in those countries and inform the retailers as to how they can better and more efficiently reach the consumer. So I think there's a lot more there to be done within tech.
That's fantastic. I'm going to give you a minute to, I'm going to make a comment and then talk about a couple things we have upcoming, and then ask you for any closing thoughts and comments. So I'll give you a minute to take a break. So I think that's fantastic. I mean, actually, that's kind of the theme of this entire event that we've had today. We started the morning with some data analytics around who's moved to the state within the last 10 years and why, and trying to break down the data. And then and that was done off of some interviews. And then people from other parts of the country, is Delaware on their radar to move to as a location, and why? And it's always kind of solving for the why, so to speak. And I think that's in part the direction of your answer. But yes, I mean, data can unlock secrets and insights, and it's really, really critical. So having that kind of skill set is critically important. I spent years as a vice president of government relations at TRW and Experian, and then on the Experian side, we're a big data aggregator, and actually trying to use that information to help make smarter decisions. You know, I wear corrective lenses. You know, it's if you don't wear corrective lenses, well, it is junk mail if it doesn't apply to you, because you don't need to hear from lens crafters or Warby Parker. But you know, but it's not junk if you have to wear these. Then yeah, I'm interested in so using the data to kind of find people like this. If you're selling glasses, makes a ton of sense.
That's right.
So, well, let me, Jared, let me thank you again. I can't thank you enough, and Steve and his team out at Christiana Mall, who continue to exceed expectations, and we appreciate all that they do for not just the location, but the larger retail council and the shopping experience here in Delaware. We've got a couple things. Let me just say to everybody, we've got a couple things coming up before the end of the month. We have our government affairs retreat shortly, and then on the 28th of October, we've got the vice president of national polling from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Ashley Rich Stevenson, who's going to present polling data on Wednesday, the 28th at noon, in advance of the next Tuesday, which is election day. And I think people will find that very fascinating. So go to our website to tee that up if you're interested. Jared, any closing thoughts or comments from you before we close out the session? And again, I'm super grateful for you for joining us today, and appreciate your insights and comments today.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mike. The only thing I would say in closing is that I appreciate being a part of this today. I appreciate the invitation. Our partnership with the state of Delaware, the municipality around Christiana, is critically important to us. As I noted, it's one of our most important assets, and we plan to be an owner of Christiana for quite a long time to come. And you'll be seeing us employ many of the tactics that I spoke to today at Christiana along the way. So we welcome you all to visit anytime, and appreciate your business.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, and appreciate it, Jared. Thanks to you and everybody, and we'll sign off here, and everybody have a great afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.